This is Linda Favela, Jeremiah 16, verse 1. Yahweh's word came also to me, saying, You shall not take a wife, neither shall you have sons or daughters in this place. For Yahweh says, Concerning the sons and concerning the daughters who are born in this place, and concerning their mothers who bore them, and concerning their fathers who became their father in this land, they'll die grievous deaths. They will not be lamented, neither will they be buried. They will be as dung on the surface of the ground. They'll be consumed by the sword and by famine. Their dead bodies will be food for the birds of the sky and for the animals of the earth. Comment verses 1 to 4 are very plain spoken. Yahweh commands Jeremiah not to marry or have children, because the generation of children that's being born now and their parents will die grievous deaths by war and famine. No one will lament them or bury them. Their bodies will be left exposed to the elements. From what Yahweh just said, this catastrophe will take place within the next 30 to 40 years at most. Verse 5. For Yahweh says, Don't enter into the house of mourning. Don't go to lament. Don't bemoan them, for I've taken away my peace from this people, says Yahweh, even loving kindness and tender mercies. Both great and small will die in this land. They will not be buried. Men won't lament them, cut themselves, or make themselves bald for them. Men won't break bread for them in mourning to comfort them for the dead. Men won't give them the cup of consolation to drink for their father or for their mother. You shall not go into the house of feasting to sit with them to eat or to drink. For Yahweh of armies, the God of Israel, says, Behold, I'll cause to cease out of this place before your eyes and in your days the voice of mirth and the voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom and the voice of the bride. Comment in verse 5, Yahweh tells Jeremiah, Don't mourn over what's about to happen. Don't bemoan it, because Yahweh has withdrawn his compassion from them. In verse 5 in Jeremiah 13:14 and 15:6. Yahweh has taken away his peace, loving kindness, and tender mercies from them. And for the reason that Jeremiah is Yahweh's representative, he should withdraw his compassion from them as well. Jeremiah has been thoroughly upset about the coming disaster, Jeremiah 4:19-21. So according to Yahweh's command that he shouldn't mourn it or bemoan it, he'll just have to get over it. Only 3 chapters ago, Yahweh told Jeremiah to say, Let my eyes run down with tears night and day. But now the command is not to mourn. In verse 6, men won't lament for the dead. There will be no lamenting them, because the survivors will have enough problems of their own. They'll be dealing with starvation, the threat of the sword, and captivity. In verse 6, men won't cut themselves in mourning for the dead. Again, men will be too overwhelmed with their own problems to make any sort of observance for others. Cutting oneself for the dead was specifically prohibited in the law of Moses, Leviticus 19:28, or cutting oneself at all, Deuteronomy 14:1. So cutting shouldn't have been a thing anyway. In verse 7, there's the sharing of bread and wine with the family of the dead. Just as we bring food and drink to funerals today, it was the same then. In that time, there will be no honors bestowed on the dead at all. There will be no opportunity for honoring, and Yahweh doesn't want them to be honored. In verse 8, Yahweh prohibits Jeremiah from going into a house of feasting. Anytime there's a gathering that involves food, Jeremiah is not to be there. It wouldn't be appropriate to celebrate anything, since he knows what's coming. In verse 9, Yahweh will make mirth and gladness cease from the land. There will be no weddings. Again, Jeremiah is to be in the forefront of putting away all celebration starting now. His refusal to attend celebrations will be a prophetic sign of what's coming. Whenever he gets an invitation, he'll have an opportunity to decline it and give the reason. Verse 9. It will happen when you tell this people all these words, and they ask you, Why has Yahweh pronounced all this great evil against us? Or, What is our iniquity? Or, What is our sin that we've committed against Yahweh our God? Then you shall tell them, Because your fathers have forsaken me, says Yahweh, and have walked after other gods, have served them, have worshipped them, have forsaken me, and have not kept my law. You've done evil more than your fathers, for behold, you each walk after the stubbornness of his evil heart, so that you don't listen to me. Therefore I'll cast you out of this land into the land that you have not known, neither you nor your fathers. There you'll serve other gods day and night, for I'll show you no favor. Comment in verses 10 and 11, the people's discernment is so poor they'll have to ask Jeremiah the why question. Why will Yahweh do this to us? Jeremiah will answer them that it's all about their sin, especially that they follow other gods in verse 11. Yahweh gave them 613 laws. Number 1 was, you shall have no other gods before me, Exodus 20, verse 3. But they don't follow even that one. In verse 12, they're stubborn and don't listen to Yahweh. In verse 13, therefore Yahweh will cast them out of the land. In verse 13, when they're scattered in those foreign lands, Yahweh knows they'll continue to serve foreign gods, but at least they won't be doing it in the promised land. Yahweh says, for the land is mine, Leviticus 25:23. The land is his inheritance, Jeremiah 16:18. He calls the land holy, Zechariah 2:12. Coming now, we enter a passage that moves beyond the disaster at hand to what will come after. This prophecy applies to the Jews returning to the land by the decree of Cyrus in 539 BC, and the prophecy will apply again to the gathering of God's people to the promised land in the end times. The Jews will be scattered from India to Ethiopia in the coming captivity, Esther 8:9, and God's people will be scattered all over the world at the close of the present age, but in both cases he'll gather them to the land. He said as an everlasting promise in Deuteronomy that if his people will return to him, he'll gather them and bring them back from wherever he has scattered them, even if they be in the uttermost parts of the heavens. The gathering will specifically be to the promised land, Deuteronomy 30, verses 1-5. Why there? Because the land is his, it's his inheritance, and is holy, as we just cited, and because he keeps saying the gathering will be there. Verse 14. Therefore, behold, the days come, says Yahweh, that it will no more be said, as Yahweh lives, who brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt, but as Yahweh lives, who brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the countries where he had driven them. I'll bring them again into their land that I gave to their fathers. Behold, I'll send for many fishermen, says Yahweh, and they'll fish them up. Afterward I'll send for them many hunters, and they'll hunt them from every mountain, from every hill, and out of the clefts of the rocks. For my eyes are on all their ways, they are not hidden from my face. Their iniquity isn't concealed from my eyes. Comment in verse 14, the exodus from Egypt will always be a big deal, but in the days that come, that exodus will be eclipsed by an even more spectacular exodus. If we think of the parting of the Red Sea as miraculous, we should compare it to the exodus from Babylonian captivity by the decree of Cyrus in 539 BC, and to the exodus that will come to pass from all over the world to the promised land in the end times. That final exodus will be bigger, more spectacular, more memorable, and more impactful than any. The first exodus, as marvelous as it was, will pale by comparison. In verse 15, the coming gatherings will particularly be from the north, but also, quote, from all the countries, end quote, wherever God has driven them. He'll bring them again to the land of their fathers in verse 15, which is the promised land. The promised land runs from the river of Egypt on the south to the Euphrates River on the north, Genesis 15:18. In verse 16, Yahweh will send many fishermen and hunters to find his people and bring them to the land. These are obviously metaphors. The point is he'll send angels or somebody to gather them up. Jesus said it would be angels that when he returns, quote, he'll send out his angels with a great sound of the trumpet, and they'll gather together his chosen ones from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other, Matthew 24:31. In verse 17, wherever God's people may be, his eyes are on all their ways. They're not hidden from his face. Their iniquity isn't concealed from his eyes. And we might add, neither does he withdraw his eyes from the righteous, Job 36:7. He won't lose track of anyone. He knows our GPS coordinates for purposes of finding us and gathering us. And if some of His people are at that time living on a space station, on the moon, on Mars, or if they've passed away and live in the uttermost parts of the heavens, He'll gather them from there too, because, as Jesus said, the gathering will be from the four winds and from one end of the sky to the other, and as Deuteronomy 30, verse 4 says, from the uttermost parts of the heavens. Verse 18. First I'll recompense their iniquity and their sin double, because they've polluted my land with the carcasses of their detestable things, and have filled my inheritance with their abominations. Yahweh, my strength and my stronghold and my refuge in the day of affliction, the nations will come to you from the ends of the earth and will say, Our fathers have inherited nothing but lies, vanity, and things in which there is no profit. Should a man make to himself gods which are yet no gods? Therefore, behold, I'll cause them to know, this once I'll cause them to know my hand and my might. Then they'll know that my name is Yahweh. Comment in verse 18, before Yahweh brings them again to the land, first He'll recompense them double for their sins. The captivity won't be pleasant. Regarding verse 19, the Babylonians will scatter the Jews across their empire of many nations. But here's confirmation that the prophecy in this chapter isn't just about the Jews returning from those nations. It says, not the Jews in verse 19, but, quote, the nations will come to you from the ends of the earth, end quote. This is an event apart and separate from the return from Babylon. The nations is Hebrew goy, which means Gentile nations. The Gentile nations will come to Yahweh from the ends of the earth. This verse only fits the end-time gathering of all God's people. It'll be something like the original Exodus from Egypt and something like the Exodus from Babylon, but more spectacular. He'll gather His people from all the earth and all the heavens, those who are alive and remain, and those who have passed on, to the land. The meek will inherit the earth, Matthew 5:5. The Exodus from Babylon was wonderful and miraculous, but it didn't eclipse the miracle of the first Exodus from Egypt. In the Exodus from Babylon, there was nothing like the 10 plagues or the parting of the Red Sea. To this day, the Exodus from Egypt is still number one in terms of fame and glory to Yahweh's name. But the miracle of Jesus' return to the earth and gathering of His people from all over will eclipse both of those. And in verse 14, quote, it will no longer be said, as Yahweh lives, who brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt, end quote. When it's all said and done, the number one feat of Yahweh, His number one miracle that will always be remembered and talked about for all eternity, will be the final gathering made possible by the work of the Lord Jesus Christ on the cross, that final gathering of all His people. With that in mind, in verse 20, what kind of fool should make to himself gods that are no gods? In verse 21, when Yahweh pulls this off, we'll know His hand and His might. We'll be first-hand witnesses of it. In Isaiah chapter 40, verse 5, the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. And in Revelation 1:7, behold, He's coming with the clouds, and every eye will see Him, including those who pierced Him, end quote. So His coming will be witnessed by all men of all time, even the ones that have passed, even the ones that opposed Him. And at His coming He'll gather His own, Matthew 24:31. He'll sit on the throne of His glory, Matthew 25:31. He'll establish the oath which He swore to the fathers to give us a land flowing with milk and honey, Jeremiah 11:5. We'll reign with Him on the earth, Revelation 5:10. Jeremiah 17 is next.